I work at GitHub on the support team, and I thought I'd just start by giving you a sense of what our support team does. So we answer support requests. We only answer email. We do no chat and no phone, which makes it super easy. And these are requests coming in mostly from GitHub users, and then some from potential users who have questions. But that's pretty much it. Here's some hot stats. There are about currently somewhere around 4 million people who signed up for accounts on GitHub. Every day, support gets around 300 new questions asked of us. And then I thought this was super interesting to me. So there's also we send out about 550 replies per day. So like 300 new questions, but then there's just back and forth with that one guy who just doesn't understand for a little while. So there are 14 GitHub support people, which internally we tend to call supported cats, like an octocat. But on any one day, there are only about 10 people answering questions. So that's kind of 10 people, 300 new questions a day. That's about what we have. And I'm here to tell you about how GitHub does continuous deployment, kind of non-stop continuous deployment, and how support fits into that, because we're a huge integral part of it. And I've got a couple of interesting things I'll tell you about it. So GitHub, we ship early, we ship often. If something feels ready enough to show people, we show it. Part of this is because the user base that we have is you all. These are people you're people who understand the things that we're doing more deeply than your average user. Like if I think about the things my mom uses and how she uses them and the questions she asks about them, this is kind of the opposite. So that makes support awesome. It means that we get to talk to people who respect us for what we're doing and who we respect for what you all are doing. It's kind of amazing. So we have lots of users who are asking these complicated technical questions. We also have questions like literally a rocket scientist emailed to say, I don't know how to fix my last password. So it can go from the very mundane to like super complicated. So you know what we're doing, you know this almost as well as we do. So that means our support requests are kind of amazing because sometimes if someone has a problem, they'll recreate the steps to get to the problem and send us a screenshot with some annotated notes on like what they did and what they found, or like terminal outputs. We just get those. So at GitHub, the support team is part of this continuous deployment process. When somebody ships something, when a developers are ready to send something out to the world, if it's not terribly big, they just ship it. And then we use Campfire, but we use a chat client. We have chat, so there's a support room. And so they'll just pop into the support room and kind of just hang out in there and keep an eye on seeing if we're all of a sudden saying, oh, there are all these questions. Then they know what's them. And also this other cool thing about GitHub is because we're very asynchronous. We have people all over the world and also people whose sleep cycles are definitely all over the world. We're 24 hours at this point. So whenever someone is supporting, even if the person who shipped the feature is asleep, there's someone else around who can help you help the support person if they have a problem. So we kind of have continuous help from a developer who's willing to go and help on someone else's project. And this means that we can have a super fast pace. We can just keep pushing out new things because we are able to keep up with it. But I was thinking about this and realized that I can explain this, but there's this secret to it, this piece that's very important but really hard to talk about, which is that, it's not hard to talk about, but it's hard to express. We have really low ego, and that sounds really egotistical to say. So, but we do. When we're working together, we're trying to do things as chill and as pragmatically as possible. And so as our developers and our support collaborate together on doing this, we are doing it this very like pragmatic, easy, like communicate well way. So we ship little things all the time. This is an example of, I pulled this from last week when one of our developers shipped something. He gave us a link to the pull request so we could go check it out if we need to, but said like, you shouldn't see anything. I shipped something that no one should notice. If someone notices, you come find me. So that's an example of like, for all those little things, all those little changes that you want to keep making quickly and fast. That's what that looks like. And so these are basically blips on the support graph. This is kind of like small things. We often don't know about them until they've already shipped, and then someone lets us know, or we don't even know sometimes, because they don't become a problem unless there's a problem. Okay, so then we ship really big things too, right? This is on the small side. So an example of something we shipped recently that we got a lot of questions about was the new contributions graph. So all of a sudden people could see things in a new way, and people really like to see what they've done. And so then, like the most common support request we're getting currently is about like if you add an email address that wasn't part of your GitHub account, that we would put some pull request view and do some action on getting that data pulled in so it can all show together nice dark green. We were getting a lot of questions about that. So we get those too. So in this case, support knew about this as it was being built. We were reading the pull requests, we were being asked questions because we have the user base in our heads at this point. And so right, there's also a staff-only mode. When we ship bigger things, we have a view that we all can see, and because we're using GitHub to make GitHub, we're dogfooding it. Because we're doing that, we can try all this out and get a sense of like how it's working like that. So support knows about all this before it ships, so that way when we start having questions, we know what people are talking about. Another way that we collaborate that I think is pretty unique is that our support team has access to all of the code and all of our issues. And from what I know about a lot of other companies, that's not the case for support. So we have access to pull requests. And so even if the support person doesn't read code, if they're not a coder, they can still look at the discussion around the code. And that usually the discussion around the code is related to any sort of support request we end up getting. It just works out that way. So that gives us a huge context when we're trying to figure out what's going on, and also so that way we have a better sense of what to tell the user when we're answering them. Also, GitHub support writes up our own bug reports. We do this quite often. So GitHub uses our own issues for So we're motivated to write bug reports and write them really well. Because we're often the first people to see the bugs. You push it out, you think it looks awesome, you played around with it the ways that you know, but then somebody who's doing some crazy workflow or using some machine that you've never even considered has a question, and we see that as support. So these users, when they email in, they are telling us they have a problem and they describe it. And because they're GitHub users, they describe it well. So that gives us data that lets us have information about what might be wrong and where to go find the code that's misbehaving. And so support wants to fix things fast because we're going to keep getting questions. We're going to get more and more and more until it gets fixed. So we would like you, the developer, to go fix it if you can, or at least let us know what's going on, so that way when we get back to the user, we can tell them something useful because that's important. But the best part is if we can get a fix in fast enough, and we can reply to the user and say, "It should be fixed now." That feels amazing. So we make it easy for the developer to see what's wrong and fix it fast. So we duplicate the bug first, and then we create the steps. And we make sure it's not something like a user error, because I'm sorry, that happens. Actually happens a lot. Or something like when the problem's legit, but they do something like they're using an unsupported browser. We support some, but not all. And my favorite one, I had to share this because it made me, we all laughed a lot about this. And if this person's actually in the room, that hasn't occurred to me, I'm sorry. But someone said, I'm using GitHub and I'm not able to push a button and it's not working. And that's all they said. So we replied and said, what browser are you using? Because it wasn't available to us, that information. He said, it was the Wii browser. And later found out his computer had broken when he wanted to push something, so he had opened up his Nintendo Wii and was using the little wand to commit. I have lots of these stories, that's just funny. So support people have analytical skills. We know when we're looking at the incoming support requests, there may be two different support requests that aren't the same, but somehow they feel similar, because a bug can have a number of symptoms that are not obvious, and after a while you can just get a sense of this. So unless you are looking at all of the support requests, you wouldn't necessarily catch this, and it might take a lot longer to find the bug. And I'm going to pause because I don't actually know all of the places where you're all working. So for any one of you who is working on a project where you're also doing the support, good bug report in front of you, you can start to see these patterns. You can see where the bug might actually reside in the code much faster. You can see what needs to be fixed. You don't have to go hunt for it if someone else has done all the work. And you're going to be more likely to care about it. You know how bugs can pile up, and you can just start to look at them and kind of hate them and ignore them. If someone has written up with care, if someone has written and said, here is exactly what I think is wrong, here are the people it's affecting, and you're going to look at that and realize that there might be something to care about, and then be more likely to fix that and put it where it should be in the priorities. It takes effort to write up good bug reports, but it takes less time overall. This is the thing I keep reminding myself every time I think, I really just want to get back to answering the support request. If you write it well, that means that the developer doesn't have to do as much work, and if they don't have to do as much work to figure out what the bug is, they can fix it faster. And when they fix it faster, then the user gets to have pain taken away. We get to say, oh, we fixed it, which makes us look adept. And we stop people continuing to ask us the same questions. So, your support teams can do this too. They don't need access to the code, and they certainly don't need to have a technical background. They are looking at user-reported problems every day. And so if they have a sense of pattern recognition, they're going to pick up on this. Writing up bug reports well means that they'll start to figure out when something's a true bug. Like when you mean the code to do something, and then the users are experiencing something else, that's a true bug. Then there are all of the things where a user wants something different than what you made, that's kind of different. Being able to separate those two is important. So, like I said, GitHub developers and support collaborate. We communicate together in issues, in the GitHub issues, and then we also collaborate and work together and communicate in our support system. Everyone at GitHub, everyone, has access to our support system. So that way, at any point, you can go jump in and search for something significant for your project name and go see kind of what the deal is, what's going on with it. Are there 0 requests? Are there actually 100? It's nice to know. So back to continuous deployment. I'm going to give you a sense of what a normal support load looks like when you ship a new feature. So say it's kind of a big feature. I kind of made this up, but this is pretty much how it goes. So you ship it. And if you have a lot of users, or if you have passionate users, or a combination of both, you're going to get then this wave of support requests. So it's good, they noticed. And then you sort through them and you figure out, oh, there are some bugs. Because, honestly, no code is bug-free, especially a big feature. So you suss those out, you figure out what those are, you get those to the developers, they start working on them, they start fixing them, and so then you get that drop. And then there's this period of time where users who cared about the site and have been using it for a while decide that they have an opinion that they want to share with you. And that is, I don't like this, why did you change it? You just get those. We see these all of the time, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just that humans are sometimes not good at change, and it's fine. We help them with any problems they have, and it's just this this period of time where people are getting used to it, they're adjusting to it. And then there's always a longer tail where there are edge cases where someone has a really tricky specific bug because of the editor they use, or something very specific. Or also casual users or people who are on vacation who are just now discovering this. So that's approximately how it goes. So, like I said, we try to have low ego when we're working on things. In fact, GitHub, as a company, hires for low ego. That's part of what we discussed when we're looking to hire someone. There's a difference between a rock star who can come and work really well and a rock star who can't listen to other people and have a thing to say. Especially coming from support, and partially a woman, sometimes it can be hard to communicate with someone else. If they think that what they made is right and good and shouldn't be changed. And I'm saying, well, 100 people are saying you're wrong. So I have a story for you. This is a story of continuous deployment at GitHub and something that happened when we shipped the feature and we were surprised by the number of support requests we got. So sometimes you ship something and you think, this is going to be great, everyone's going to love it, it's going to be perfect. And then you are overwhelmed by what happens because it's not perfect and there are a ton of bugs. And beyond that, middle ground, there are people who just say, I do not like this, I do not like this, I do not like this. Like children. There are also kind of in-between gray area bugs, where it's like, it's not new, the code works right, but people aren't happy with it in a legitimate way. So, this is GitHub issues, if you're not familiar with it. I thought I'd just make sure you know. So this is where you, any project can host problems or bug reports or communicate with each other about code. And I'll tell you about it. I couldn't find a screenshot of what it used to look like, so I'm sorry. So this is what it looks like now, but I'll show you in a second. So our design team, and I'm going to pause because our design team is mostly also developers. So when I say developers in this story, I mean those who are designers and developers working on this design project. This was a big project to change how the issues looked and also some of the functionality of it. So there were a lot of pieces to it. And this is what they shipped. So, that'll speak for itself. So within hours of this being deployed, support was getting a steady stream of feedback from our users. The design team had worked really hard on this. They'd spent time on making this like new aesthetic. It's very subtle and kind of sexy to make this happen, as well as doing the functionality changes that were also a part of this. And so as support's sorting through this feedback, we're looking at it all. We saw the usual mix of straight up bugs and people who were just saying, I don't like it, I don't like it. And again, that's totally normal and standard. But mixed in with these concerns about the lack of readability. So this wasn't a bug in the true sense. The site was displaying as intended. But these things that people were saying were cause for concern. It seemed legit. So looking at this queue of support requests with varying concerns, support needed a way to look at this. So we had a lot to work with. We have all of this data, all of these users, and these are people who are reporting bugs, and they're complaining, sometimes both in the same support request. And this data was from people who care and use this every day, all day. So when you change that, people get emotional. It's not always bad. People can also get super excited about just telling you a story where things did not go well. We have lots of months where they do go great. We get like virtual hugs. So anyway, so this data was emotional. And actually there wasn't that much swearing, but it just happens. And I think it's also because GitHub is seen as being kind of casual. And so our users will swear with us all the time, usually in GitHub. Even if someone has a problem, they might start off their email with, GitHub, I fucking love you! Which is partially because the support that we provide, I think they can talk to us like that, because we're going to talk to them. I mean, I don't tend to swear when I respond to users, but we're trying to be casual like that as well. So we had just this huge list of all of these support requests, each one from a different person who was upset. And we needed a way to sort through them. And it's kind of overwhelming. So usually what we do is we'll start opening up issues. Here's an issue for this functionality piece, here's an issue for this bug, for the gravitars weren't showing, all these things. But this was so big, by opening up like 10 bugs on those developers, it seemed like that would be maybe kind of overwhelming for them and disjointed. So instead, we wrote up, also I think, yeah, this is an example of a real support request that someone said, just to show like that complaint space of like, I can't tell you what's wrong, but I hate the new bug, and can you please put it back? Like that kind of like just emotional response. So we didn't want, the designers didn't need to see 10 of these, so we were trying to figure out a way to kind of give that impression, but like have them not have to like read through every one. So here's what we did. First, we made a dossier. And I made up this, it's not a made up word, but we've not used this word at GitHub to describe this, but it seemed right. It's kind of a badass word, like, here, I made you this, now go be a spy or something. The dossier. We summarized essentially all of the questions and the complaints that people had, but in a way that was more focused and in a way that someone could read and get all of the things you needed to understand out of it as a developer without a rolling nature of it. So first, the first part of it, because it's the most actionable part, were the bugs, like the straight up bugs. Like in the new issues, the avatars, the gravitars were not working. So that was just something that needed to be fixed. That's easy. That's actionable, so we can just go to that. That was a good part. And second, compiled information about the, this UI problem where users weren't able to see what things actually look like on the monitors. And looking at it in retrospect, this looks beautiful. It's beautiful if you have like a nice big monitor and a display. But if you're on a small monitor, you're on an old monitor, or despite a giant monitor, you have eyesight problems, this wasn't okay. This wasn't good enough for people. So there's a little point I'm going to add in here, which is totally support and geeking out, but you might find valuable as well. To convey a problem well, to convey anything well, if it's kind of complex, there's two parts to it. There's stats and stories. Stats tell you how many people. Because if I say someone doesn't like this, you're probably thinking, great, of course, there's going to be one person who doesn't like it, that's fine. But when you have rows and rows and rows of hard examples, that helps show you what the gravity of it. So it's hard to show stats, because stats are kind of wiggly anyway. But these are all links for the same problem. They're all links to our support system. That's why they look like they do, but it's like, you know that there's a problem and that many people are experiencing the same problem. Okay, and then the other part is and you've been referring to it lately as when it hits you right in the feels. You may be familiar with this phrase or name, but when someone tells you, when one of the users is able to eloquently state something so much better than you were trying to describe it, this is something I shared with the developers in this dossier. So for someone else to say, for you to think about a user out there who loves GitHub and is using it and just wants to do their job, that as a colorblind user, the new tags are a lot more difficult to see, that means something. And there were two of them that just seemed like they were the most useful to express to the developers. I didn't need to try to convince them of anything because these were well said. So, although GitHub dog foods GitHub, if you're not familiar with the term dog food, which is actually a really gross term, because anything about eating dog food, we use GitHub. We are users of the product that we're selling or providing, but we're not the majority. We can never be the majority. So we need users to tell us what they know when there are problems to be able to fix it. So that involves us being able to swallow our ego and listen to this without feeling like they just called our baby ugly. So we wrote up a dossier. Support was able to now see kind of the lay of the land. How many actual bugs were there? There's kind of this big, messy UI problem, and then there were a couple of little things at the end. We have it all together. So at GitHub, this is an aside about how our workflow works. We have a private repository called /support that has no code in it. Support uses the issues to keep track of little clusters of support requests that seem like they could be related but maybe aren't, or we're not sure, or we'll start to write something up if we think that it is, and then we'll share it with another team. Because in issues, you can use the @mention for a whole team. So we wrote this whole thing. We got it all worked out. There were screenshots, there were quotes, there were links out to all of these things. Got it all done, and then I was really nervous to show this to the design team. There was so much information. It was such a swell that I didn't want to overwhelm them. I didn't want them to feel like I was hitting them over the head with something that was going to upset them. But I also have to assume that everyone else I work with can work with as much low ego as I think. So I just had to I don't know what I want to say it. I had to trust that they were going to be able to handle it. And they did! I was super nervous. And so then within 2 hours, someone had noticed the notification and jumped back in and made a comment saying, nice comprehensive list. And then felt like they should jump right on those bugs right away. So this is a point about the continuous deployment, is that they pushed something big. They knew that there was going to be a support response, so that they were ready to just jump in and start getting on it. This made me feel way better. So they jumped in and fixed the bugs right away. And then they also started a conversation about this UI, the very gray UI. And so in the end, having this low angst So like, we made it pretty chill. Low angst dossier. With lots of places for anyone who came to read it where they could dig in and start thinking about the problems or fixing the bugs or discussing the UI problems. Meant that the design team was able to assess this low ego. We didn't come to them saying, you fucked up! We just said, here, here's some stuff to know. So they discussed, the end of the story is they discussed the label issues. So they discussed the label issues, they talked about, well, maybe if we make the font bigger or thicker. They played around with it a lot because they shipped something that they wanted to ship, they were proud of this. But in the end, they decided that they needed to roll this back. Which is, for UI things, I mean, we roll stuff back, that's also part of continuous deployment, right? When it doesn't work, it just pull that back. But for UI stuff, it's a little bit harder to do that to people. But this is what they changed it to. So this makes, I think, incredibly low ego. To go from the thing that you thought was great and beautiful and sexy to the thing that people can see. In the end, as much as you want something to be pretty, it has to be functional. And the design team did it. I'm incredibly proud of them for this because it took a lot of work to get to something that's really So support's job is to champion for the users, but in a way that makes sense to the developers. So our empathy goes both directions. We care about our users, but we care about our developers. And so that's why we're motivated to write up excellent bug reports, because that makes the developers happy and their lives easier, and they're more likely to fix the bugs and have the users be happy too. So this can be an awesome, supportive cycle. So if you have a support team, consider how you work with them. Their incoming skill level, like I know a lot of support teams, the people do not know how to code, they don't really understand all of that, they're maybe frustrated at writing or talking on the phone. But any good support person can learn the analytical skill parts to become a bug hunter. You can leverage the inherent knowledge that they have just by looking at all of the support requests that they see, and you can get that knowledge out of their heads and into someplace useful for you. So from the perspective of support, honestly, it's hard to write up good bug reports when there's so much else to do, but the benefit of helping these people, the developers that I care about doing a good job, helping them trumps that, makes it seem like it's not a big deal. And because we can all together then help the users, means that it's more than worth it in the end. So I want you to know, I don't know how to code. I've never been a developer. But I don't need to understand my company's code to be able to do this job really well. So your support team, however you happen to be working with them, however technical they happen to be or not be, can do things like this. So together you can fix bugs faster and then get on to the next adventure, the next rollout. So, this is our company. Probably almost 6 months ago, but this is all of us. Does this show? Yeah, it's really fast. I can slow it down, sorry. That's Tom, our CEO, falling off, if you can see it. So I'm fixing the sticky problems, like this UI change story that I told you. Remember, too, as a developer, if you can check your ego, if you can keep yourself pragmatic and talk pragmatically about things, it means that you can look at a problem and discuss it. And so even if you don't end up changing anything, you know that you've discussed it well and you're doing right by your support team and most definitely by your users. Unfortunately, situations like this are kind of stressful, which means you have to try to check your ego while staying calm and pragmatic. So I have to end a pro tip for you. Whenever I start to feel like I'm losing my cool, I turn to animated GIFs. Yeah, I say GIFs. So you have to have your own power GIF, you have to go find it. But whenever I start to freak out, this is what I truly actually do. This is what I look at.